All right, James, thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I think first I'd like to say that Wayne and Gabby, as well as Rolando and Lilium did a fabulous job on discussing agreements for sale and rent to own. I think they really added a lot to this conversation, and it'll be a nice setup for what we want to talk about now, which is, you know, kind of a little more of the technical, legal side of things. But, you know, that's part of what's going on with strategies. So we're going to kick up some slides here. I'm going to run you through what's going on with agreements for sale, rent to own. And so techno guru Donna, hit it with the slides. Let's get going. And we'll just keep moving it along here. And I'll keep talking as those slides show up. And there they are. All right. All right. So we're going to chat about mainly about agreements for sale and rent to own. But first off, those are two of kind of 5 creative strategies. Assignments, otherwise known as wholesaling. We've spoken about that at Mogul Group previously, and that presentation, I believe, is available in the Mogul back office. So that's something that makes it worthwhile to be an actual Mogul member, because you have access to all that wonderful, wonderful content. So assignments, which is basically getting control of a property and then selling your interest in the property. You get a property under contract, kind of undervalue, you find somebody to buy it from you for more money, you sell your position in the contract, you take your money and you move on. So that's assignments. Fix and flip, well, this is the world's favorite creative strategy. You can, I think, go anywhere. If we were able to go into bars, which we can't, but if you were on the road in Kuala Lumpur and you went into a bar and found someone who spoke English, if you said, you know, the reason I'm here is because I just made a whole bunch of money on a fix and flip, the guy next to you in the bar would say, me too, or I know what that is, or I've been thinking about it. Gee, what do you, so fix and flip is certainly a well-known strategy for buying properties under value, adding some value by usually some renovations and selling for more money. Then we have agreements for sale and rent to own, which we're going to talk about momentarily. But then number 5, which is kind of interesting, joint ventures apply to all of these strategies. So we're not going to talk too much about that tonight, but I think it's important for you to know that as you work your way through any of these 4 strategies, having a money partner, having somebody who can write a check is very valuable for you, and sometimes it is essential. All right, so today we're going to talk about AFS and RTO. We're going to give a little more detail on exactly what they are and a little more detail on where and when you might use them, not to gainsay what our previous speakers have said, but on the legal side, I'm just going to give you a bit more detail on that. So, you know, the first thing is that I think we all have to make sure we understand what we're in this game for. And I think most of us at least started out buying properties for on a buy and hold basis. It's a long-term buy and hold basis. You buy a property, you get great tenants, you pay down a mortgage, sooner or later you have it free and clear. You might get some capital appreciation in there, but buy and hold, long-term buy and hold is on one side of the equation. Creative strategies are not long-term, they're short-term. They are short to medium-term. They produce cash for you now. They have a different tax treatment. They're a business, and so you get a little higher tax treatment on them, but at the various ends of the spectrum, long-term buy and holds at one end, and creative strategies, the 4 or 5 we've talked about, are right at the other end. So next, opportunities. There's lots and lots of opportunities to apply creative investing strategies. One of the opportunities you're creating for yourself is hooking up with folks like the Mogul Group, who are one of the few, maybe the only organization, the only real estate organization in the city of Edmonton, and perhaps in other places that really understand what these creative strategies are, and where you can go and talk to a realtor and say, agreements of sale. They say, no, it's agreements for sale. And yes, we know about them. Not too many realtors do. So there are lots of opportunities, and good to have professionals who understand what those strategies are. Now, many times those opportunities arise when a seller is distressed. They already own a property, and there's something going on in their lives that's causing them to sell, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Sometimes it's buyers, as Rolando and Lillian were saying. People want to buy and they can't buy. So there are opportunities on the buying and selling side. And one thing we've learned, my slide says no place for judgment. But I think maybe a better way to describe that or say that is that it's really important not to analyze an opportunity in front of you and come up with the answer to the analysis that says that seller would never entertain this kind of an idea. That seller would never sell for this. That seller would never do that. People say, Barry, you've been in this business 45 years. You've seen everything, kind of done everything. You know what it is that I haven't seen? It's that I haven't seen all of the circumstances where sellers will listen to an idea of yours that you wouldn't think they do. So some amazing deals come up that if you have a wide open mind and you're ready to work on a win-win basis, you can find things that you would not believe you can find. So don't judge what sellers are up to and what you might be able to negotiate with them. Now, creative investing, we're in a down market, we're in a down to flat market. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And we don't really know how much we're down or how long it's going to last. So I'd like to kind of kick those ideas to the side, because there are opportunities in up markets and in down markets. But for you, if you're going to think you're going to be a creative investor, you have to be realistic and honest about your capacity. I mean, do you have time to do it? And I can see everybody going, yeah, right now, we've got lots of time to figure out how these creative strategies work and how we might implement them. And, maybe COVID is doing that. I've got a nice sweater and a shirt on here, but I'm wearing sweatpants, because we're at home. And then you have to look at your ability and experience. What do you really know about these creative investing strategies, and how much do you have to educate yourself to actually put them into effect? So having said that, let's move on to this thing called agreements for sale. And it's always confusing for people that if you're buying a property and there's a mortgage on the property, that it just looks like you're buying a property with a mortgage on it. And it's not quite like that. So here are the differences. If you are buying a property from a seller who has a mortgage already, the first thing is that when you buy a property by way of agreement for sale, title remains in the seller's name. Title remains in the seller's name. That's one obvious and huge difference. But you as buyer have an interest in that property. You have a buyer's interest in the property. It allows you to file a caveat at the land titles office. Gabby talked about filing a caveat to protect her interest. And she files a caveat, says, hi, I'm Gabby, and I have a purchaser's interest in this property pursuant to an agreement for sale, which means anybody who looks at the title can see she has an interest, and that's important to protect herself. And it's also important when she goes for financing and she has to say to a lender, okay, I want to get a new mortgage on this property. And they go, yeah, but you're not on the title. She goes, well, I actually am on the title. You see, I have a caveat. So as a buyer, you do have an interest in the property, and it's a real interest. Now, if there is that underlying mortgage, the seller continues to make their mortgage payments. You might be making them a payment as buyer, but the seller continues to make their own mortgage payments. And overall, the seller is your bank. So I think Wayne said, and Gabby both said, that an agreement for sale is a seller financing strategy. And yeah, it's seller financing if the seller is your bank. So that is certainly true. All right. Here it is. That's the sum of agreements for sale. Somebody says, what's an agreement for sale? You go, you know, overall, it's seller financing. And then you can get into talking about the details of how an agreement for sale works. So let's talk about some of the specifics of this. So as we said, the seller is your bank, and the seller is giving you seller financing. Whatever deal you cut with the seller, whether the seller has a mortgage on his property, big or small, or whether he has a clear title property, because he could have, whatever the seller has, he's your bank. And you're going to negotiate an amount of money that the seller is lending you with an interest rate. And like any loan, you're going to have to make a payment to that seller. He's going to lend you some money. It might be this sum or that sum. It might be exactly equal to an underlying mortgage. It might be, as in Wayne and Gabby's place, it might be an amount more than that at a different interest rate, but the seller is lending you some money. And if you get a loan, you got to make a payment. Now, if there is an underlying mortgage, the seller is going to get a payment from you, and then he's going to make his payments. And if your payment to him is bigger than his payment to his bank, what does he do with that money? He puts it in his pocket. It's a way for a seller to generate some cash flow in certain circumstances. Now, as buyer, what do? You're taking over the property. Now, you are the buyer, and on the completion date for an agreement for sale deal, it's just like if you buy a property with a new mortgage. You get the keys, you take over the property, you are the buyer. You are going to be responsible for a payment that might be the seller's mortgage payment. So let's just call it a mortgage payment. You're responsible for the taxes and insurance, and you're responsible for all the maintenance on the property because what are you? You're a buyer, you're not a tenant. So you're going to have a payment that equals those items: mortgage, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Okay, so sounds good so far? Just let you think about that for a minute while I have a drink of water.
Good segue, honey.
That was good. I was drinking a beer earlier, but now that I'm talking, Donna said I have to put it in the fridge. It's okay to wear my sweatpants, but no drinking beer while we're doing our end of things. All right, next. So where do you find agreements for sale? You can find them everywhere and anywhere, but the classic place to find them is where sellers have little or no equity, the low equity, no equity deals. Now, having said that, when you heard Wayne and Gabby talk about theirs, that wasn't a low equity, no equity deal. It was a deal where Wayne had substantial equity. So I'm glad they were on to talk about it because in previous presentations, sometimes folks have difficulty wrapping their head around how you would do an agreement for sale where a seller has lots of equity. And I think Wayne and Gabby did a good job of explaining the circumstance. However, in a flat to negative market, there are lots of circumstances where a seller has little or no equity. And how does that happen? So let's just use an example here. Let's say a seller bought a property a year and a half ago or 2 years ago for $400,000, and they got a CMHC 5% down mortgage. So 5% of 400,000 is 20,000. And in the last couple of years, let's just say, you know, in some sort of average situation, the value of their property that they paid $400,000 on could conceivably or could easily be $380,000 and conceivably be more than that. It could be 360, 350 or less because property values have been flat to negative. Of course, it depends which area you've been in. So if you think about a seller who bought for 400, put 20 down, and at this point, he goes to see his favorite realtor and says, I got to sell my property. And the realtor says, yeah, I know, but the actual value today, I know you paid 400, but the value today is 370. 370. And how much is your mortgage at right now? 395. Oh, okay. So your mortgage is 395. We can sell it for 370. You know, I hate to tell you this, but I'm a realtor and I work on commission, and the commission at 7% of the first 100,000 and 3% of the balance on a sale at 370 is a big chunk of change. That's $15,000 or $18,000. I haven't done the math on that, but it's a big chunk. So now the seller can only sell for 370. He's got to pay his realtor $15,000 to $18,000. Let's say it's 15. That brings it down to $355,000. He's got a payout penalty on his mortgage. That's $350,000. Let's say it's a $5,000 penalty. So he can sell at 370. He's got to pay his realtor 15, pay his mortgage company 5. He's only going to get $350,000 in the end. His mortgage is 395. So how does that sale work? You know, that sale just does not work. And that is a low equity, no equity circumstance that makes sellers want to consider whether or not they want to be the bank. And if you were an AFS buyer in those circumstances, the fact that you might sell for low equity, no equity doesn't really work for you unless you can make the property work. It doesn't make any sense to acquire a property for basically no money down if after you acquire it, you can't have at the very minimum neutral cash flow. And obviously we want to all have a positive cash flow property. Now, why do sellers do this? Job loss, divorce? You know, it doesn't matter. If a seller needs to sell, as I said previously, don't judge the reasons. Just look at the deal and the opportunity and see if you can turn it into a win-win. Now, an AFS does work in any market. I mean, I think it works better in a flat and depressed market, but it does work in any market where a seller doesn't need all his money right now and where he might be prepared to consider being your bank. So we got a couple of case studies here. Just going to turn to Donna and say, Donna, how are we doing for time here? I have 10 minutes left, or I've spent 10 minutes.
No, you have 10 minutes left.
I have 10 minutes left.
You're using
what?
You're using up 4 right here.
Oh, Donna says I shouldn't use up 4 minutes discussing whether I have 10 minutes left. She's such a wise woman. Case study number 1. All right, our seller has got just enough money to make a payment. He can't pay his condo fees and taxes of $500 a month. It's a pretty new condo. And our buyer says, it's looking good and the rent will carry expenses. So we put together an AFS purchase. This is a smaller condo. The price is $127,000 with $2,000 down on a 1-year term. We're renting back to the seller for a month, and our buyer is going to rent it out for now and search for an RTO tenant or do a refinance or add it to his portfolio. So he's got plan A, B, and C as exit strategies from his AFS. Why do buyers like this? Well, who has run out of mortgage qualification room? I know Keaton and his cute little sidekick there would get us a mortgage if they could, but sometimes we just can't qualify. Sometimes we can acquire these properties for little or no money down. In fact, frequently in this kind of a market. And now you control the property. When you buy a property by way of an AFS, you are just as much in control as a buyer who goes and gets a new mortgage, and you have lots of exits, as we saw from the previous slide. Now, in the early days, when we were just starting out with agreements for sale, we thought that the problems would be, let's say a seller has a HELOC, a home equity line of credit style of mortgage. And when we go to do our agreement for sale, the seller has not advanced all of his HELOC that he could. Let's say he has a $350,000 HELOC, and he's only advanced 300,000. You buy by way of agreement for sale. All of a sudden, the seller's writing checks and increasing the debt against the property. So we're kind of worried about that. Also, all mortgages have a due on sale clause. The seller has a mortgage and he has a due on sale clause in his mortgage, and you buy by way of agreement for sale. Well, isn't the bank going to call the loan and kick you out? And then sellers are always worried about buyers defaulting. Seems like a nice guy, but what if he starts missing his payments? What am I going to do then? So that's what we thought would be problems. And you know what? None of those things, in my experience, and I've done it between 75 and 100 AFS in the last probably 6 to 12 months. And none of those things have shown up as problems. But what does show up is that AFS are, just because of their nature, more complicated administratively. You have to set up payments in a different way. You know, as a buyer, you're not on the insurance policy, but you need to know it's insured. Renewals can be problematic sometimes. When at the end, if you're going to get a loan and you go to see a lender and you go, yeah, you know, but I am an owner. I'm buying by way of agreement for sale. They go, what? Which is why you need an experienced mortgage broker to assist you when you're exiting. And you need AFS lawyers on both sides of the deal. If there's a lawyer on one side who has no clue what an AFS is, that can ruin your deal right out of the chute. So these are things that turned out to actually be the problems as opposed to the previous slide. Further challenges, if you're doing AFS and you need a joint venture partner, just because of the structure of a particular AFS, it's like any JV, you've got to find somebody who's got the money. If you come to the end of the term of your AFS, and we had questions in Wayne and Gabby's presentation, you know, if you come to the end and you can't get a mortgage and you need an extension, a seller might say to you, absolutely, you just have to give me another 10 or 15 or $20,000 and I'd be happy to extend for another 1, 3, or 5 years. And of course, when you're negotiating your AFS, if you're looking for JV money, you have to be careful in an AFS deal, like in any other deal, about going unconditional without actually having that money absolutely available to you. All right. But in the end, as much as we have some of these hurdles, nothing has been insurmountable. These are deals you can do. You just have to work your way through the problems. It's probably a good idea, if you have a complicated one, to talk to me or another AFS lawyer and make sure it gets written up properly to start with. My worst nightmares are AFS deals that show up on my plate that I've never seen before, that just have not been properly put together. And it takes a lot of legal time and your legal money to straighten them out. So nothing's insurmountable. A good coaching tip is to get some consultation if you're putting together any complicated deal. All right, so now if you do an AFS deal and you actually put it together, you know, what in the end does it do for you, and how can you fit it into your portfolio or your plans? So you can just add it to your portfolio. You can turn a short-term AFS deal into a long-term, essentially a buy and hold. Put it in your portfolio, and you can do that especially where you have the right to renew mortgages for a number of terms. And I have seen AFS deals where because the seller has no equity and because he doesn't really care, he says that the buyer can renew for 4 5-year terms. So 4 renewals at 5-year each. That's definitely long-term. You could buy by way of agreement for sale and then assign your interest to someone else. That's a rapid cash maneuver. You can get your property by way of AFS and then turn it into an RTO. So you get some cash, and that might be a medium-term way to get the rest of your money out. You could acquire it, control it, and fix and flip it pretty quickly and get some rapid cash. or you could buy it, fix it, and refi it, and then add it to your portfolio, or sell it outright, or turn it into an RTO. So certainly a flexible strategy on what you do after you acquire it. There's lots of flexibility with AFS. When you get down to managing an AFS deal, if I'm on for the buyer, I want them to have a power of attorney. If I'm on for the seller, I go, what? Give control to that buyer? No way. So depends which side of the fence I'm on, but power of attorney is certainly great for buyers, and we have more AFS buyers than we do sellers. Banking payments, you got to set up payments. The seller typically has a payment to make to his bank, and so that is something that you have to manage properly from the beginning. Insurance is going to remain in the seller's name, but there are some things buyers can do. As a buyer, you might say, yeah, I know, but why don't we insure it with my insurance company? Yes, still be in your name, but then notices come to you as buyer, and it's easier adding yourself as second named insured. You want to perhaps monitor what the seller is doing. I'm speaking from the buyer's perspective here. You want to make sure that the AFS seller is, if he has an underlying mortgage and you're making him a payment, you want to make sure that your payment goes to him and he makes his own mortgage payment. And like any real estate deal, I mean, you always want to have that exit strategy in your mind before you close. I mean, you cannot go into any deal, let alone an AFS deal, not understanding what your exit strategies are. I guess that I should change that strategy from the singular to the plural, because you want to have a few strategies. And, you know, you can exit quickly by assigning, just selling the contract. You could exit quickly by lease optioning. You can also sell an option on the property without a lease. We don't see too much of that, but options are a simple concept, and you could sell an option to somebody, give them a month to see what they can do with the property, and then take it back. Or you could just sell it for sale at a, make a profit to another buyer. Is it going to cash flow as a rental on the exiting slowly side of things? What about renovating and flipping, or putting a legal secondary suite in, and you can make it more attractive doing that? Oops, got to go back one there. Oops, Donna. I'm into rent to own. I need to go back 2 slides right there. Exit slowly. Okay. I'm just taking directions from the actually the floor director. But on the exiting slowly side of things, do you want to keep it yourself? Is it going to cash flow as a rental? Like I said, you can add it to your own portfolio. And if you think about it, if you're a long-term buy and hold person, and maybe you don't have enough money or enough ability to qualify for your first mortgage, let alone your fourth or your fifth mortgage. I mean, if Keaton's giving you the word that, sorry, you just can't qualify anymore or at all, you could acquire properties, and your question to yourself is, okay, I'm doing a long-term buy and hold on this AFS. Is it going to cash flow? And on the plan B, yes, you could reno it and flip it, or maybe put a legal basement suite in to improve your cash flow and make it more attractive for a flip. Or, oh darn it, Donna,
you're hitting the wrong button, honey.
I'm not hitting the wrong button. Next one. Yes, no, back one. There we go. Okay. Sorry, folks. You can renovate it and keep it for your own portfolio, or maybe refinance because you've really increased the after repaired value, and turn it into a slow exit, or when the other exit strategies make sense. Because I think, as Rolando said, there's lots of stuff we can't predict. We're putting together deals now, and there's things we can't control. And as much as we might look at circumstances and say, well, this is what I think is going to happen, you need to be aware of other exit strategies and be flexible. And as we said right at the beginning, joint ventures apply to all these exit strategies. And if you start to develop your network and maintain your list of people who want to write checks. And I think I'm just going to probably get close to finishing off here by saying it's important for all of us to remember that the vast majority of people want someone to come along and say, listen, I know what I'm doing. This is a great strategy. Take a look at these 2 deals I've done and how they perform. I've got one in the pipeline. It's going to be amazing. Here are the numbers. What I need for you is to be a person who can write a check that will make this deal go, and your guaranteed investment is. There are lots of people who will, if you can do what you say you're going to do, they will write checks. And if you can build up your list of people who trust you because you do what you say you're going to do, you will do a zillion deals. Now, having said that, the next part of our presentation was going to be on rent to own, but
We're saving that for another
we're
one.
saving that for another time because, of course, I've run on at the mouth here far too long and taken up way too much of my planned time and over my time. So James will just coach us all on when we're going to do our next thing on rent to own. So James, that's me for now.
Barry, you did one heck of a job. I expected nothing less, and you delivered as usual. So thank you so much for that. So yeah, rent to own, big topic, tale for another time. Of course, we're gonna have you back as a speaker, and let's all just keep focused and intent on the fact that that next time is gonna be in person again. Because as much fun as seeing you through a screen is, I like giving you a high five and seeing you in person. Now, we're gonna open up the chat to questions. So if we can spotlight Barry, let's put the spotlight on Barry and ask him a couple of questions, everybody.
All right, I'm looking at the chat box. You guys are so funny. That's not a question.
No, ask them to ask you the
Thanks, Amy.
questions. Ask them.
All right, James, why don't you look in there and pluck out some questions that you think would be the best ones for me to answer.
Oh, first question came through. What are the closing costs associated with an AFS?
Can you just say that again, James? It's a bit quiet.
What are the closing costs typically associated with an AFS?
Oh, that's a fabulous question. So just by way of example, if you were just buying a house with a new mortgage, let's say buying a house at $350,000, getting a new mortgage, a standard deal. The legal account you would pay in my office is about $1,495 plus GST. So let's call that $1,500. When we do an agreement for sale, it takes 2 to 4 hours of my legal time to do it. So it ends up costing about $1,000 more. So $1,500 plus $1,000, it's typically around $2,500 when you do the initial part of an agreement for sale, which, man, that's a lot of money. That's a big legal account. But against that, I think you have to balance off the fact that hopefully you're buying the property for little or no money down and it works for you. So that's a bonus. But the other side of this, folks, is it's important to understand that agreements for sale are a 2-part deal. If you buy one by way of agreement for sale now, and you have a 4-year term on it, at the end of the 4-year term, you now to exit would typically go and get your own new mortgage. So now you've got kind of a purchase with a new mortgage contract in 4 years' time. So there's another legal account at that stage. So it's a 2-parter, and you're probably $1,500 4 years from now. So if I want to add up those numbers, I can do math in my head and say $2,500 plus $1,500 is only about $2,200 total, I think. Oh, no, that's not right. It's $4,000. So 2,500 plus 15. So it does cost a bit more on agreements for sale. And that is certainly something you have to know.
All right. So if we look at the next question there, Adrian just asked a question that said, what if you flip it? Adrian, can you elaborate on the question a little more? Or maybe just hop on the mic there, Adrian.
What if you flip it for closing costs? So Adrian's saying, so what if you acquire it and then you want to flip it? I mean, I think that probably kind of depends where in the transaction you flip it. So if you get it under contract by way of agreement for sale, and then before the completion date, which is say 3 weeks from now, 3 weeks from getting it under contract, if in that 3-week time span you want to flip it, that might occur for, within that first $2,500 range of things. If you actually acquire it and 2 months after the completion date, you want to assign it at that time, that could be, it's kind of hard to tell. When we're just doing purchases with new mortgages, we've done so many of them and they're so standard, we can say, it's $1,495 plus GST. Whenever you're doing creative real estate, and that's something everybody should just understand, they're unique, they're one of a kind, and there's an element of how much time as a lawyer do I spend on these deals in order to come up with what the cost is. So part of succeeding and keeping your legal costs down to the lowest you can possibly keep them is educating yourselves about how these creative deals work and making sure they're properly written, that you consult with your lawyer and get some coaching as you work your way through it. And those kinds of things will keep those, gee, sorry, it's time-based and I can't give you a quote, circumstances as low as they can possibly be. So Adrian, I guess I'm kind of weaseling out on your question, but I just can't give you a real answer on it.
That's fair. Okay, so Amy said I had an owner reject AFS because of a concern that they won't receive payment. What kind of legal recourse would I have if that happened?
So the owner is concerned that the buyer won't make payments. So from the seller's perspective, they are concerned that buyers won't make payments. So I think part of getting into an AFS deal where you have an edgy seller is to sell yourself. The true legal answer is that if a buyer doesn't make payments under an agreement for sale, the seller has the right to essentially foreclose on them. That's their ultimate legal remedy. But that's not the way it usually works. The way it usually works is that buyers and sellers get together, they put together a deal. Everybody is is positive and using their best efforts to turn it into a successful win-win deal. And for some reason, on the buyer side, it's not working anymore. In most circumstances, buyers and sellers meet, they talk, they try and figure out whether there's an answer to why it's not working for the buyer, and they figure out something that fits everybody's circumstances. And that could be the buyer saying, I just can't do it anymore. I'll tell you what, I'll give you back the keys. I'll take my caveat off the title, and you now have control of the property again, which for a seller puts them back in the same position they were in, which is maybe not where they wanted to get to, but on a really experience-based practical answer, that's how most problems are solved when buyers can't carry on with agreements for sale. But the ultimate remedy for the seller is a foreclosure. Title's still in their name, they can foreclose, they can get rid of the buyer. But something else, Amy, that you can say is that in our experience, I haven't had one AFS deal go bad yet. Of all the ones I've done, I haven't had one where a seller phones me up and says, Barry, we got to foreclose on that scumbag buyer. Or a buyer says to me, Barry, I can't carry on. What are we going to do? So, Amy, I hope I answered that from the seller's side. Anyway, that's the answer.
Awesome. Okay. If we'll have questions kind of going once, going twice. So, Andrea had a question. Or did I miss it? Oh, Barry. Oh, great. Okay. The refi.
So I'm just reading, Andrea saying, I missed your point on the refinance in the AFS example. Can you elaborate a bit? Now, what was my point on the refi when I was talking about an AFS?
Andrew, do you want to maybe just take your mic off and elaborate a little bit for us, please?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's hear Andrea's golden tones.
I don't actually have much more to say about it because I saw there was something about it on the slide, and in my brain I was like, how would that work in an AFS? And I really don't know what else.
Okay. All right. Well, I think one of the things we said with an AFS is that after you buy a property and control it, and you did, say, a renovation. Let's say you did a renovation, and you cranked up the after repaired value. You could go along to a lender and say to them, listen, I'm in control of this property. I want to do a refinance and extract my newly created equity. So it's a bit trickier than that to actually do, but if you buy it, control it, raise the value of it by doing renovations, then you can refinance to extract equity.
Even when you're not on title, you can do that.
That's the tricky part, Andrea, but yes, you can. There are ways to do it.
So perhaps using private funds?
You can use private funds. Yeah, you can. Private funds are expensive if you just look at them on their own, but if you've bought a property well to start with, where you had some instant equity, if it was the kind of a property where you can really make your renovation dollars pop for you at, say, 3 times for every renovation dollar you put in, you add $3 worth of value, you might be able to have a situation where private money works extremely well. And you know, as I think about it, if you want to do a refinance and use private money to acquire title to the property, then go along to the bank and say, well, I'm the owner, let's do this. They say, oh, look at this. You haven't been the owner for a long enough period of time. Sometimes you can find big 6 lenders who will help you acquire the property at a lower value. And the minute you acquire it, they'll put in the application for the refinance on the after repaired value. I just saw one like that the other day, and I was shocked that a mainline bank would go at it so quickly. I thought, you know, we'll acquire it at the lower value, and then we'll just have to let the loan mature for a while, and in 6 months we'll go back and do a refi. But in this particular case, they put the application for the refi in right away, and it all happened, I think, within a month. But private money is certainly one of the classic ways to extract equity in an agreement for sale where you've added value through renovation.
You're just blowing my mind, because I'm thinking it's not even really my mortgage. I'm the buyer. I've done this work to it. How could I refinance? It's not even my mortgage.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I've achieved my goal. I've blown a few minds. Andrea, I know it's been a success if I've got people going, what the?
Awesome. Okay. Let's see, I see a few more questions rolling in. Let's see. We just funded a client where he purchased a foreclosure with an A rate, 45 days. Oh, that's pretty sweet. Thanks for chiming in there, Keaton.
All right. What does Keaton say? We just funded. Yes. Keaton, very good. That's great, Keaton, that you're on with us tonight, because you know, there are other ways to finance things, and that's why you want guys like the Green Team and guys like the Mogul Team. If you have realtors and mortgage brokers who understand these creative strategies, it's way easier to acquire and finance than it is if you go to someone who goes, boy, that sounds interesting. I've never heard of it, but I will definitely work my hardest for you. No, that doesn't work.
Always a pleasure. So, okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up. Barry, thank you again for being so willing to participate. We have a whole other rent-to-own part of your presentation to go, so we're going to bring that in. Depending on how long we all are stuck in quarantine, you know, I think we might think about doing a Facebook Live segment just to break up the middle of the month, because it's great content. People want to see it, and it'll be a great conversation. So I'm going to just conclude here by saying thank you, everybody, for coming out. It's awesome to do a webinar. It's fantastic to talk about these strategies. And I'm just going to echo the sentiment from the beginning of the meeting that these are strategies that are going to make more and more and more sense as the market unfolds. You know, we're still in that scary phase where things are changing and bad news is coming out every day and things are happening, you know, almost on a daily basis. But this is going to mellow out. We're gonna flatten the curve. You know, just a pat on the back to all Canadians. It looks like we're doing a very, very good job, you know, compared to maybe our neighbors to the south in terms of doing a great job with this thing. So the fact that this isn't escalating faster is a testament to the fact that what we're doing is working. So that's great. And once that dust settles, it's opportunity time. So thanks to everybody for talking about these strategies, because they do make sense. Thanks to Keaton. Thanks to Keaton for giving us that up-to-date mortgage tips on how to get those deferrals done. Because, gosh, I've talked to a few people who are like, I was on hold for 4 hours and I got shut down. That's the worst. That's super frustrating to hear about. So thanks to Keaton for talking about what to say, when to say it, and what to do, because we don't want to miss out on a deferral option if we don't have to. What we're going to try to do, I see there's about 40 of us left. We're gonna try and do a little bit of networking. We've got the chat; it's rocking and rolling. If you guys look at the top right-hand corner, there should be a button there that will switch you from speaker view to gallery view. And if you switch to gallery view, then you're going to have the opportunity to see the face of everybody who's still in the meeting. So we're going to stick around for a bit. If anybody wants to ask any of the speakers an additional question, don't be shy, pipe up. I see a lot of us are on mute. So, you know, unmute yourself. If you wanna keep the conversation going, we can kind of do a combination of chat and in person. And you know, I mean, it's definitely not as fun as networking at the beautiful space that we have available at the Creative Hive, but we'll work with what we got. Great to see y'all. And for those of you who are planning next meeting, I would say if I was a betting man, there's a very high likelihood that our next meeting is indeed going to also be online. We're going to get some feedback on whether this is going to work better or whether we should just go to straight webinar mode. Next time, guys, this is an important one. Please be aware. The next time we're going to be talking about landlording and tenant relationships. You know, I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, a lot of people have the wherewithal. They haven't been laid off yet. They have the savings. Most of your rent is going to get paid on April 1st. To put it bluntly, the shit isn't really going to start hitting the fan probably until May 1st. So it's going to be very, very timely to be talking strategy for our April meeting. So that's going to be a really, really good one. We're going to have all of our property management, landlording, and tenant relationship experts out to talk. And yeah, so that's going to be one you don't want to miss out on. So thanks again, guys. Don't be shy about sharing the link. And we're glad you could all make it out. Something fun to do on a Wednesday, and I think these strategies are going to be good ones. I know I just got a communication today from a client of mine who has 10 condominiums in a walk-up apartment building, and he said, you know, I really want to get rid of these, given the fact that the market is shifting, and I'm willing to do a sweet deal. What would you recommend? And I said, would you do an agreement for sale on your entire portfolio? And he said, yes, I would. What's an agreement for sale? So I've got a follow-up meeting with him tomorrow to just explain what agreement for sale is. But don't be surprised if, you know, people who are looking to liquidate their portfolios have these like large-scale coordinated agreement for sale deals coming up, because I know that one just presented itself to me today. So with that, thanks again, everybody. Let's stick around and do some networking. Let's keep the chat going, and you know, let's just see how this multi-screen networking kind of goes down. And if there's any other questions, let's throw them in there right now.
Now you can talk.
Yeah, there we are. All of us.
Yeah, yeah, there you are.
Yeah. Full of questions.
Saying hi, that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when I was doing kind of a Zoom call with my friends from around the world. There were only 8 of us, and there were definitely some moments where everybody was talking all at once. But I don't know how to manage a few dozen people. That's for sure. So maybe for those of you that have the Zoom app installed, if there's maybe another thought would be if anybody has a particular person they want to chat with, just send them a private message and you kind of break off and do a one-to-one Zoom meeting. But if I think the other thing I'm probably going to do is if the chat doesn't really get fired up here, then maybe in about 5 minutes I will shut it down. And great question. Can Keaton go over one more time what to say to a lender, Scotia, to defer the renewal payment? Keaton, are you still here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Keaton, let's just review that one more time. Note that we are recording this, so you'll have access to it through the online portal. Can we spotlight Keaton? Oh, that we already did. Look at that. All right, Keaton, let's play this out. Let's play this out. Let's say that I'm the bank and you're the person, and no, let's say that, yeah. So like, okay, ring, ring. Hi there, beep, beep, boop, boop. This is Scotia Bank. What can I do for you today?
Hi, my name's Keaton Kirkwood, and I'm calling to inquire about a mortgage deferral for my investment properties and my residence.
Okay, Keaton. Let me pull up your information, clickety clack. Can you please tell me a little more about your situation?
Yeah, I'm a mortgage broker, and the COVID-19 situation's impacted my business. Real estate transactions are slowing down, and I'm concerned about my ability to maintain my payments. So I wanted to be a little bit proactive and see if I could defer my mortgage payments for the next 6 months.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit more about any financial hardship this is causing you?
Yes, just the cash flows are slowing down. I'm self-employed, and we have some concerns about future transactions, so I just want to be a little bit proactive. And I want to defer my payments for 6 months.
Okay, so at this point, Keaton, what would the bank say next?
So they're going to ask you an outright question: has COVID-19 impacted your situation or cash flows or ability to maintain your payments? You say yes. They're going to say how. So, I'm a contractor, I'm an employee, I've been laid off, my hours have been reduced, my expenses have gone up, my properties are no longer, I'm not collecting rent, whatever it may be. They're going to note it. There's not really a pass or fail to it as long as you have a reasonable answer.
Awesome.
If we put Corey Graham on the spotlight, he actually did it this morning. So he was able to defer 2 of his properties as well today. So
Cool.
He went the branch route where he dealt with the branch that set up his mortgages, and they called him and it was about 10 minutes and done.
Awesome. No, that's great. I mean, I was actually quite shocked to hear people saying that they were having trouble because so my strategy was, the first thing I did is I went online and Googled what the hours of each particular call center were. And then I set my alarm for extra early because, we're in a Western time zone. So if it opens at, 7 a.m. in Toronto, that's 5 a.m. for us. So I just got up super duper early, 5:01, beep, beep, boop, boop. I got through super quick. I just picked one bank per morning, got through really, really quick. And it was like smooth sailing. So I really appreciate you coming through and talking about it because my personal experience was every single person I talked to, and I guess I might have already had the verbiage down pat. I was like, I am experiencing severe financial distress. I need to defer my mortgages because of tenants. And they were like, okay, great. We'll send you paperwork. In some cases, they said, we'll send it in for review and get back to you. But, that's kind of my experience. So, but people are having trouble. So it's good to get more inside information on how to navigate that situation. And I would agree with Keaton that it's...
Step back and just answer quickly the should you defer, should you not. No harm in it. The worst case is your payments will go up. The extra interest cost, I did the math, about $1,500 over 6 months per 100,000, assuming a 3% mortgage. But the key thing to remember is you're already paying interest on that. So the compound interest aspect is if you start compounding 3% on 3% for 6 months, it's very trivial. We're talking $20 or $30. If they re-amortize that interest back into your mortgage and get you back on track, you're looking at a payment increase of about $14 per 100,000. So, you know, if you had a $300,000 mortgage, you're looking at your payments going up about $42 a month. I'm personally a believer that if you don't want a $300,000 mortgage, that's going to be about 1,500 times 6. So we're looking at about $9,000 in cash reserves you've created by deferring. So personally, I'm a believer of that liquidity is worth having. As an investor, it opens up investing opportunities, allows you to deal with, you know, the tenant damages your property if they don't pay you. So I'm personally an advocate for it. But if you don't need to, you shouldn't do it as the official answer. But it's a pretty big.
I'm gonna throw in my take. I wanted to be proactive because I figured that it was going to get super busy in the bank queue, and it has. But you can also undefer. Like if this is a 6-month situation, 6 months of deferrals make sense. If this is a 3-month situation, then, you know, around month 4, I'm going to call the bank back and say, yeah, actually put it back to normal now, please. So, you know, I mean, that's kind of, I think, is that actually something I can do, Keaton, or am I now stuck with a 6-month deferral?
Nope, you can undefer at any time.
Perfect. Now, the way that I look at it is, just like I said, most of your rent's going to get paid on April 1st. So you don't pay a mortgage payment on April 1st, and you build up a reserve. And then a chunk of your tenants probably aren't going to be able to pay on May. So then you burn the reserve. And then June 1st, who knows? So it's all about building a cash reserve in the first couple of months, just in case the next couple of months get really bad. And then if this all blows over and you're really concerned about the extra interest accrual, then that money that you saved in your reserve, just call it, ask if you can do an early pay down. And then you basically undone all of the damage you did with the deferral. Is that a fair statement, Keith?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then once again, the damage is very, very trivial. We're talking about a couple $1,000s. It's not going to harm you. Deferring is a bit of a gray area if you're trying to get a mortgage while you're deferring with the same lender. There's no official policy on that. But if you're deferring your payments with TD and you go to Scotia as a lender, it shouldn't have any impact. The problem is this stuff is changing multiple times a day. So it's shifting in a more consumer-friendly version, but it's you know, there's no black and white rules on this yet. That's the problem. Like if you call in, you will literally have rep to rep give you a different answer. So if you get an answer that doesn't work for you, try again.
That's a very fair statement. Okay, there's another question here. Would the 42 per month be for the remaining time of the mortgage?
So Lilium, it's $14 per 100,000 on your mortgage. I use $42 as an example of the $300,000 mortgage. And it's because you're not making any payments for 6 months. What they do is they bump your amortization to get you back on track. So an example would be your 300-month amortization you defer for 6 months. They need to increase your payments after 6 months to get you onto a 294-month amortization. So that's why your payments go up. So it's over the remaining, call it, 24 years and 6 months in that example.
Thanks.
I can do a case by case for you if you shoot an email.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, I think we have a question for Barry. How should I approach the seller financing situation? But you need to hold back the down payment. That's a good one.
What's the question?
Ask again.
It says, how should I approach a seller financing situation when you can get the mortgage but need them to hold back the down payment of vendor take back?
Right here.
Yeah, how do I approach someone where you can get them back? Not quite sure I understand that.
Well, why don't you hop on the speaker and elaborate on the question there, so you can have a little chat with Barry here.
Hey guys. The question is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the question is just thinking in the sense where I can get qualified for the mortgage that's necessary, but I don't have the down payment per se. and I'm trying to create a creative situation where I get them to hold back the down payment, say for 5 years, for instance, right? Just being that I've never done one, like what are the things to keep in mind when trying to bring that approach to a seller in a sense?
Okay, so you could qualify for a mortgage, but you
You don't got the 20%. You don't got the 20%. Is there like any legal things to worry about doing
okay.
that?
All right. Well, if you were, if you were coming along to me and I was the seller and you wanted to buy my $400,000 house, what you might offer to me if you don't want to put any money down at all. So you don't want to put any money down. I think what you're doing is you have to sell yourself in this deal. You have to show a seller why essentially being your bank for all of the money, because really that's what you're saying, is I could qualify and go get a mortgage, but I don't want to do that because I don't have the down payment. So Mr. Seller, you have to be my bank for all the money. So you're now selling yourself to the seller and trying to, you're explaining to him why you're a good bet for him to be your bank for everything. And that probably means you're going to have to do a much more elaborate job of explaining who you are. It's background, it's education, it's the job you have, it's your fabulous credit rating. And then you have to make sure the seller, it's going to have to be a seller who doesn't need any money right now, and a seller who probably can see that you're a good bet and that having you pay him 5%, for example, on all the money he's lending you, or maybe 2.5% on what would be a standard mortgage amount, and 5 or 6% on the down payment that you don't have, is all in his best interest and in a way that's going to make him a whole bunch of money. So, I don't think you're going to come across this kind of a deal too often because mostly, sellers want their money. So if you do come across it, you're going to have to look good, be good, and sell yourself to that seller.
How about in the event where, say, you get a mortgage and the mortgage gets approved to pay him like the 80%, right? But you just hold back the down payment portion of it.
All right.
That type of scenario.
Okay, so in that kind of a scenario, you're running into disclosure problems. So mortgages are the kind of a contract where you have to fully disclose things to your lender, and lenders always want you to have some of your own skin in the game. Keaton might be able to dig in on this, but I don't think there's any lenders who would say, you know what? Yeah, we'll give you an 80% mortgage. And if the seller wants to carry 20% by way of a VTB mortgage, a second on the property, because you're such a good bet, absolutely. So in a scenario like that, you're going to run into first mortgage lender's policy, which really say you got to put up some of your own money, and they make you prove that you've got the money and prove that you've actually paid it. So I think that's really hard to do with a conventional first mortgage.
Okay.
Yes, I can add to that. The A lenders and B lenders, I'll add the caveat from an investment perspective, not from a broker perspective. If they are aware of a vendor take back, which means if the lawyer handling the mortgage conveyance or the lender is aware of a vendor take back for down payment, they will not lend to you, A or B lender. Some clients in the past have used separate lawyers, one lawyer to handle the vendor take back and one lawyer to handle the conveyancing. That has worked historically, but it requires a little bit of planning and is a bit of a gray area. I imagine that if you ask the lawyer handling the A mortgage financing or the bank, they would say it's not okay.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Can I just add on to that? Would that also be the case if the VTB was just a portion of the down payment? Let's say you had, you're going to put down 10% in cash and then offer the seller a 10% stake by VTB. Would that still be not cool with the lender?
With an A lender or B lender, no. Any institutional lender regulated by OSFI wouldn't fly. Maybe there's exceptions in very, very rare circumstances, but commercial is the only real tool that we still see tax on a regular basis. With an agreement for sale or something a little more sophisticated, you might be able to arrange it where the owner has their 80% mortgage on their residence already with TD. They're still the owner on title. You now have an agreement for sale. You may or may not use a power of attorney. You may be able to then get a vendor take back for the little bit of equity in the property, depending on how it was structured and the circumstances of the deal. But for standard you on title going to say TD, it wouldn't fly. The moment they hear vendor take back, you're going to get declined.